how can we make the whole process ethical and transparent so that anyone can just go and audit what happened with an AI model at any point in time in the future.
Yeah, hello and welcome to Let's Tech Pod. My name is Henrik and the company that does this is Codic Consulting and Codic Education. Today I have with me Sukesh Kumar Tedla, who's CEO at Unbiased. Welcome, Sukesh.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here. So the theme today, the idea is to discuss around ethical AI. So can you maybe tell me a bit about yourself and why you wanted to found Unbiased?
When I started Unbiased back in 2018, but before that, quickly about myself, I'm originally from India. I've been here in Sweden for almost 7 years now. I did my master's in telecommunications from Karlskrona. BTH. So back in 2016, I moved to Gothenburg, started working at Ericsson and Volvo Cars. But during 2017, I came across this technology called blockchain. And since then, I kind of got really impressed by it, and I saw the potential in the technology. And since then, I have been working in that space of blockchain technology. So I'm also the chairman for Swedish Blockchain Association today.
Yeah.
In addition to that, around the same time, there was this lot of talk about fake news, misinformation, privacy issues, and so forth. So, and as I came across blockchain technology, it kind of looked like a solution to me for these kind of problems related to fake news, misinformation, transparency, accountability type of thing. So that's when I started working with it. And yeah, here we are almost 3 years now, and with working with blockchain and working.
Are you still convinced that blockchain can solve the problem with fake news?
Well, to a certain extent, it's not going to be 100% straightforward solution. So to a certain extent, it could definitely solve the issue. But coming back to Unbiased. So when we initially started Unbiased, the mission was basically to fight fake news and misinformation. But since then, the mission has evolved into not only addressing these end user issues like fake news and misinformation, but also the technological challenges in relation to these advanced technologies like AI and machine learning algorithms. Because when we started our journey in this space, we came across different technologies to address this problem. So one of the common technologies that were out there was AI and machine learning. So when we started building our own algorithms and our own models, we started soon realizing that and asking question ourselves, why should people trust our models? How can we prove to the audience or the end users that our models are built in a transparent way, that they can validate everything? But as many of you know, AI is black boxed.
You don't know why it comes to a certain conclusion.
Yeah, exactly. So we can't really explain why an algorithm behaves in certain way. So it could be various factors with the data, what kind of data it was trained upon, what kind of practices did the developers choose during the building process, and their own personal biases, their impact on the algorithm. So that's when we realized that there is actually a more fundamental solution that needs to be addressed first, and that's the need for ethical AI. And since 2019, we pivoted and started working with addressing the issues of ethical AI. So starting from the data level of building an AI algorithm to actually bringing it into production, how can we make the whole process ethical and transparent so that anyone can just go and audit what happened with an AI model at any point in time in the future. So that's what we are doing at Unbiased. So we're building a platform which helps build ethical AI for organizations and developers.
Interesting. So many different topics here. I mean, it's a lot of hype around blockchain technology and also around AI. And since we mentioned them a lot here, can you start by just explaining on a basic level what blockchain is?
Sure. So blockchain is a decentralized and distributed ledger technology which basically means, in layman terms, it's like a group of computers across the globe, all sharing the same database and communicating in real time. So if one of the information on one of the databases or one of the servers is changed, it's replicated across all the other servers. But the information is also validated using cryptography and advanced computations networks. So so that's basically the blockchain technology. So once you put something on blockchain, it's recorded forever. Basically, if it's a public blockchain. Because there are thousands of servers, anyone can connect to the blockchain and get the same data today. So for people who are much more familiar with Bitcoin, maybe you might have heard Bitcoin. So Bitcoin basically runs on blockchain technology. So people often confuse when I talk about blockchain and Bitcoin. They both think it's the same. But it's actually different. Bitcoin is the end use case of blockchain technology. So there could be many use cases of blockchain, and many things can be built on top of blockchain technology today.
But I guess maybe were they invented at the same time, blockchain and Bitcoin?
I mean, we have distributed networks and distributed servers and everything for a long time, but I would say like Bitcoin technology or Bitcoin use case kind of made blockchain technology into mainstream or put the limelight on it. So.
But is it true then that you have pivoted a bit from your original idea with using blockchain to fight fake news? Do you think that's very common for like a startup, that you pivot from one idea to something that you find is more tractable later on?
I think it's definitely a common practice, I would say, in many startups. So if you're not pivoting, then you're doing something wrong, I would say, because
or you're very lucky, maybe.
Yeah, I would say that's really a rare scenario, but like I think majority of the startups out there, you start with one idea as a founder on a very high level, but when you start working with it, you will come across many other challenges that you have to address. So you have to take some pivots along the process.
And in the current form, what you're trying to do with Unbiased, what is it? You say a platform. Is it a little bit like a search engine, or how does it work?
So right now it's a data marketplace. So where companies can go and get services in relation to data that they need to train AI algorithms. So for anyone who are familiar with machine learning and AI, these algorithms need lots and lots of structured data. Yeah. So in order to get this structured data, you need some kind of platform where normal people just sitting on the PCs and working on identifying what is cat, what is dog, where is the person in this image, where is the car in this image, and so forth. So, but this can be much more challenging than we think, because right now we are using AI in many use cases. So banking sector, automotive sector with self-driving cars, with drones, and so many use cases. So there's a requirement for lots of data, and data is the first step in building an AI algorithm. So we built this data marketplace, which has blockchain integrated to it, so that each and every time, whenever there is a data point that is being generated on the platform, it's being recorded on blockchain. So at the end of the day, when the customer is getting a data set from our platform, they have a complete audit history of what happened with this data set. So in the coming months to follow, we're actually adding additional tool sets that can also make the whole building of AI algorithm transparent as well, not only the data part, but also the actual training of the algorithm and modeling it and putting it into production.
But is it true then to say that you're focusing on the annotation of data, to the actual structure, or to get correct info on things like where is the car, where is the person?
Yeah, so annotation is one of the services that we are offering right now, but we also offer like a marketplace where you can trade data between organizations. So if your organization has some data sets that you're not using, so you can sell them on the marketplace now, because they have a clear proof on blockchain, so that it's easy for people to trust it, and people can trade it in a decentralized fashion. So we usually talk, or we refer to data as oil, or like the next gold or whatever, right? So, but it's not tradable. It's just sitting there in the database. Today, but right now with our solution, data can be traded, data can be trusted, and you can also have accountability as well, like what's happening with the data and so forth.
Is it a problem for you to make certain that whoever enters data into your marketplace actually owns it in the first place?
Well, that's a good question. It's always difficult to track that information, but at the end of the day, you have at least some level of transparency of who is doing what on the platform. And also from a regulatory standpoint or compliance standpoint, they can just go and verify this information as well in future if there are any issues or anything that needs to be taken care of. So everyone has the same set of information. And on the European level, there are two regulations that are being worked upon right now. So one is related to ethical AI, and the other one is the Data Governance Act. So we might see these two regulations coming into practice in the next 1 to 2 years. So these regulations basically talk about what we are trying to address right now with transparency and accountability of data and AI algorithms.
So, I mean, you when we were talking with you initially, you brought up the idea to discuss ethical AI. And I mean, how did you get interested in ethical AI from the beginning, so to say?
It's quite a journey with AI domain for me, because if we have met like 4 years before, I had this perception of AI as some kind of Terminator style, right? But when I started learning about AI technology starting 2018, I really got interested in it, and as a person with technology background, I really liked the space. And then once I started learning on how can one build an AI algorithm, how does it work, the intricacies of building AI algorithms. So then I also at the same time saw many problems with it when it comes to ethical practices. So there are many examples today which are really huge. For instance, with Amazon's recruitment algorithm, like 1 or 2 years back, I guess it was.
Yeah.
They identified at a later date that it was kind of giving preferential treatment for men instead of women. But no one would have known outside Amazon's organization if they haven't disclosed it outside, right? So these kind of things happen, and there are regulations that are being drafted right now. So when I came across this topic of ethical AI, when I started researching it, I thought, okay, there is a topic that we really need to address, and which kind of aligns with our mission of this misinformation and fake news domain, because it's a broad spectrum. So ethical AI has its own place in that.
Do you know why the EU lawmakers and policymakers first initiated this new law or regulations on ethical AI?
Yeah, definitely. So I think even in the law and the background work that has been done, so these are the examples that they were referring to as well, related to Amazon's recruitment process.
Yeah.
But also one of the key items in their plan was, because the dependence of AI is increasing each and every day. So moving forward, we will have AI in self-driving cars, in our streets, in our phones. Basically, we will be taking the suggestions from algorithms moving forward, whether they could be financial suggestions, personal level suggestions, which might have an impact on your personal life. So they're trying to address these concerns beforehand from a technology standpoint, so that all the organizations and developers working in this space have some kind of common ground and common practices that are adopted across the board, so that whatever the algorithm that a developer or a company is building has to follow certain guidelines.
What could those guidelines be?
So there are 7 points today in the regulation that are mainly focused on. One is transparency, and the second thing is auditability of the AI development process,
Yeah.
and accountability, who is to be held accountable at different stages, and also the quality of these algorithms. And there is one other space where they're trying to evaluate the risk impact of this algorithm. So sometimes some algorithms are just suggestions, which might not have much impact. But there are algorithms where it could be deciding your loans, or it could be deciding your recruitment into an organization, or it could be something else, which has much more personal impact on you as an individual. So these kind of algorithms need much more vetting and much more practices in place. So.
Do you think yourself that AI is at a place now where it should dictate who a company hires?
Yeah, I think it's actually being used in many organizations today, and many people don't realize that or don't even question that these algorithms have some kind of biases in them. And now with the advancements with algorithms like GPT-3, which is basically generating text for you, like a human, it's kind of impossible for you to identify between a human and an algorithm anymore. So, but the developers of GPT-3, they themselves have clearly stated that the algorithms is actually biased towards a certain group of people and different domains. So people have to be careful. They cannot just throw the word AI and algorithms into applications. They have to be careful on evaluating the impacts of these algorithms as well.
I guess the AI algorithm will never be better than the data that it gets. So if there is inherent bias in whoever annotated and created the data, then of course the algorithm will also be biased.
Yes, definitely.
And we as humans, of course, we have to admit that we are biased. Even if we try not to be, we, demonstrably are biased. So, but do you think it's possible to actually make ethical AI?
Yes, I think so. To a certain extent, maybe 90%. I would say so, because when we are trying to take these extra precautions, not just on the paper, but actually implementing them into practice, tools and different platforms and services, then we are actually trying to address the issues. We are trying to think a bit much more broader than our own biases. Okay, how will this algorithm impact the end users? How will this algorithm impact different cultures or different group of people? So when we start questioning ourselves from these different perspectives, I think we will easily identify many challenges in these algorithms.
I guess regulations will typically come after there is a problem or after a technology field has developed and certain problems are evident.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're already seeing the problems in this space. So there are, for instance, there are already some regulations in US today in some states. Where if you're using an AI algorithm to recruit people, you have to get that audited first before you can use it in practice. Okay. And similar use cases in EU as well in some states. But also now with these regulations, there will be much more requirements in the healthcare industry or the automotive industry, which might have an impact on the individual's life and the scenarios. So,
I guess it has been discussed quite a lot when you have self-driving cars and there's an accident, who's actually responsible. For example, but if you go to the field of the medical field, what have you thought about any ethical issues there?
Yes. Because I think one good example lately is the COVID-19 research, right? So there were many use cases or many scenarios where people were using algorithms or people were trying to build algorithms to address the issue, address COVID-19. So the data that is being used to train these models, actually there was a research done in US, I think it was a couple of months back. Basically, when they evaluated the data was limited to only people from, I think, 3 states across the whole United States. So, and even in those 3 states, it was really limited in terms of the crowd and audience and the demographics of the people. So
then the algorithm will be very biased or not understand the full scope.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty obvious, like the algorithm is going to be biased, but this information is not clearly aware to the general people or the companies that are going to use these algorithms moving forward. So these things needs to have some kind of labels or some kind of tracking mechanism so that when certain kind of algorithms have these kind of impact, maybe indirect or direct impacts, they have to have these kind of practices. If not, they shouldn't be used in real time or production.
So if you look at other companies, for example, Google, how do you think they should address the problem of ethical versus unethical AI? Many threads to follow there, obviously, with Google, but
yeah. They try to address the space of ethical AI, but they recently fired their own ethical AI team, basically pretty much who is leading it. And there was a lot of backlash because the reason for firing her name is Timnit. So they fired her because she was raising some concerns related to one of their own algorithms. So yeah,
they didn't like that.
Yeah.
So maybe they should. It sounds like they should step up their game then.
Yeah.
How do you think AI should be monitored? I mean, since it will affect us in so many ways in society in the future.
I would just say straightforward, like it cannot be monitored to the level that we want. But what we can do with these kind of regulations is that we try to take the necessary actions. Just because there is a regulation, one has to try to follow it. So we can't address the issue to 100%, but we can try to limit the exposure of it.
Yeah. I think one interesting thing is to talk about the actual problems that have happened, where you can show a strong bias or unethical AI. And you mentioned recruitment at Amazon and the COVID research there, COVID data. Do you have any other examples of actual problems that have happened with machine learning algorithms?
Yeah, I think there were many examples with, for instance, self-driving cars as well. For instance, I think one good example was with Tesla in the States. So there could be many reasons. Of course, we cannot pinpoint what's the exact issue of it, but so there was this truck lying on the highway, just on the flat.
Yeah.
But the car thought it was more like a billboard or something, and it just went and hit the truck because it just didn't realize that it was a truck lying on the road. Because one of the reasoning for that particular issue was that the algorithms were probably more trained on the data from the sensors and the image, the cameras, which has different viewpoint, different angles that they take images in. And these kind of images doesn't really reflect that particular scenario, for instance. So, of course, one cannot predict all kinds of scenarios, but it's still a risk. The person was fine, but it was a risk.
Yeah, and that also sounds a little bit like stupid AI rather than unethical. But I mean, or one case that I've heard of is, for example, the possible ethical when it comes to self-driving cars. Then ethical dilemma of should I save my own driver, but it could mean that I kill 3 persons on the street.
Yes, I did read this research. Actually, it was quite interesting because there was this analysis where the researchers were trying to ask questions in different geographies as well, like in Asia. How are people in Asia answering this particular question? And how is the actual AI algorithm working or trying to address this? So, for instance, in Asia, the younger population, they said that they like if there is a old person, a younger person, and a baby, for instance, they said that they would probably sacrifice themselves to save the elders because it's kind of their culture. But when it comes to the United States and the Western parts of the world, they were a bit more selfish and said, okay, we want to save ourselves compared to the others. So it was this cultural difference as well. So the researchers were actually arguing that should the AI algorithms be different, the way they are behaving should be different in different geographies.
That's
Because
interesting.
yeah,
But I mean, it sounds so much like a very highly theoretical example, and I'm pretty sure when I took my driver's license, they didn't discuss any of this. Who should you steer towards if you had to kill one person? It's so unlikely that it will ever occur, and you anyway have to react, directly and not probably give a thought to where you're steering if you are about to crash. But I guess one could argue that the AI actually has a higher capacity than a human, and it could make those choices, and then maybe it becomes interesting. But I'm not sure. It's such of a
it's really hard to pinpoint more specific examples, but there are definitely a lot more examples. So if someone is interested in this particular topic, they can just search for EU AI white paper, and they can read through many other examples as well that they pointed out in the white paper as well, and the reasoning for these kind of regulations as well. So I think that's a good start for many people.
Another such area where you might think about ethical AI is the case of deepfakes, where you can nowadays create videos where it looks like it's President Biden who says something, but actually it's not. And I guess they did this with the Queen as well of England.
Yeah, this is the thing. That this is one of the broader spectrum that I was talking about earlier with fake news and misinformation.
Yeah,
it's kind of fueled by AI. It's not like maybe 10 years or 15 years back, it was maybe much more manual spreading of this information through news and other channels. But now it's just like you just press a button and it gets spread to everyone instantly. So you don't even have to monitor it sometimes because the algorithms that we have today are almost real humans. So.
Yeah, very interesting subject to talk about. Maybe to end off here, what do you think the future for ethical AI is? Will this be one of the major concerns as we continue to develop AI into the future?
Yeah, I'm really glad to see that many people, many researchers, many organizations and governments are talking about it and trying to address these issues. So I think definitely moving forward, at least in the next 1 to 2 years, we will see a lot more development in this space. And this is actually one of the hottest topic according to Gartner's research as well during last year, when they researched many organizations and business leaders in the industry. So this is a growing topic, and we will see a lot more hype in this space in the next couple of years.
Thank you very much, Sukesh Kumar.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.